It is live. Hi, everybody. I'm going to give you a few minutes to jump on. And everybody see the screen. There they are. All right, we've got 41 on. Frank, thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. Got me a little feedback going on. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday. We're very excited about today's webinar. So due to time, and I know I've still got people jumping on, I am going to go ahead and get started because I don't want to take any time away from our presenter today. First of all, thank you everybody for joining us at the 2021 Harmony webinar series. Today's presentation, the Wellbriety Movement, Cultural Approaches to Treatment and Healing of Native Clients, presented by Don Coyhis. He is the president of White Bison, Inc. I think we're in store for a wonderful presentation. So let's get going. A little bit about Harmony. Most of you have heard this. I'll keep it brief. We are nestled up on a 43-acre campus in the Rocky Mountains, just outside of Estes Park. We are a residential treatment center with over 50 years of experience, and we fostered a generation of long-term recovery, and we generally believe in supporting our clients and their families for a lifetime. We have 70 beds. We do offer detox, a residential program, and we now have an IOP program. If you have any questions about any of our programming, you can reach out to me at cweeks@harmonyfoundation.inc.com, or please go to our website. The website is listed below at harmonyfoundationinc.com. And then, of course, you can always contact our admissions staff at 866-686-7867. So a few little housekeeping rules to go over today. This is a recorded webinar, and there will be an evaluation coming to you at the end of the webinar. If you happen to click off before that link pops up, it will be in an email after the webinar. So usually there's a thank you for participating email that pops up. There will also be a link to the survey in the email I send you with your certificate. So we do appreciate and value your opinions. Please be sure to fill out that survey. Your certificate will come by email by end of day on Friday. So if you do not receive it by end of day on Friday, then please give me a quick email. I'll be happy to let you know what's going on or get it right out to you as quickly as possible. This is, as I said, is recorded, and in order to receive your certificate, you need to be engaged in the webinar for at least 45 minutes in order for us to issue that certificate. If for some reason you need to jump off, I can give you a certificate of attendance, but that will be without the CEU on it. Any questions? Let me know. Happy to help. I do want to very quickly thank White Bison Inc. for their support. Please take the time to go to their website and learn more about them. They do amazing work, and I'm so grateful for our presenter today. He is Don Coyhis. Again, he is the president of White Bison Inc. He is of the Mohican Nation, and he currently lives in Colorado Springs. He is the president of White Bison Inc., an American Indian 501c3 nonprofit corporation dedicated to creating and sustaining a grassroots Wellbriety movement that provides culturally based healing to the next 7 generations of Indigenous people. Through the leadership of White Bison, the Wellbriety movement has taken a prominent role in the recovery of many Native Americans and their communities. Don has published many Wellbriety books and resources, and for 30 years, Don has been called upon to provide technical assistance by national policy organizations such as the White House Office of Drug Control Policy, SAMHSA, and other national recovery organizations to develop culturally based prevention and recovery programs for Indigenous communities. He has also received many prestigious awards, including the 2009 Purpose Prize. And with all that being said, I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I will let you know that if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the chat box. We will monitor them, but we are going to hold all questions until the end of the presentation. So, so you don't forget, type them in, we'll watch them, and let's get going. Dawn, I'm going to turn this over to you. There we go.
Okay, well, good afternoon, I guess it is, everyone. My name is Don Coyhis, and I am a member of the Mohican Nation. And our nation is a clan system, so I was born for the Turtle Clan. On my mother's side, our tribe is a matriarchal system, and I'm just really excited and honored to be here with the Harmony series. I actually have kind of a little secret relationship with Harmony. 42 years ago, I attended my first meeting there, and I met my first sponsor there, and I haven't drank since. Harmony was a little bit different, I think, than it is today. It was, they had little houses and things that I used to go up and write inventory. So I was just excited when I was asked to share some of the approaches that were listed here in these 6 areas. So that's just a little bit side information. I was just excited to do it because it's part of my heart and a part of my recovery story. I'm just so honored to to be here doing this. So these are the 6 objectives that we're going to take a look at sharing over today. And so White Bison, we've been around about 34 years, and what our movement is called the Wellbriety Movement. And so there are 572 tribes in the United States, and each has its own culture, its own language, and its own traditions. And so we work within these communities, helping them bring back the culture, to help bring back the recovery, and to make it more meaningful to Native people. So we've been at this since 1988, developing cultural-based programs for the various tribes throughout the United States and Canada. And we're going to be expanding to Australia and to New Zealand, I think this year, to the Aboriginals and to the Maori people. And so we're just growing, I guess, very similar to Harmony. They've got an excellent program. I know a lot of people have come through there, and I'm just really honored to be here sharing some of this information with you. So, and there is a Wellbriety store that you can check out. We have a lot of products that we developed over the 34 years. And as it was shared, we try to develop, like nature has a sustainable system. So that's how we try, is we try to do what we do that it can be carried on and handed down, for the next generations of indigenous people. And so we have that idea to pass it on to the next generations. So one of the things we know about that I'd like to share with you is, in order to be effective with a native treatment, one of the things that probably would help a lot is to have an understand of the past, because there's things happened in that past that is connected to the future, is connected to now where we're at. So the saying is this is the past, this is how it used to be a long time ago. Is when our people lived on the earth and they started together in groups, then they started to observe nature, and they started to see the animals, and they watched the animals, how they raised their youngs, and they started watching over seasons and over cycles, and the bears woke up just as the salmon were swimming. And so they started to see there was not only a physical world, but there was some type of spiritual world that seemed to be very, very dependable. Those fish always came at the same time. The bears always came at the same time. So what they would do then is they started to gather this knowledge about how to live in harmony with this earth. Then we formed clan systems, and that was how we maintain the knowledge, because there was so much knowledge of what they gathered as they grew in the earth. Then because they lived on different parts of the earth taught different teachings to different native people. And so their language is different, their ceremonies are different, and the culture was different. So we need to realize it's not like TV where you see all Indians are the same. It's exactly the opposite. There's a wide diversity among our native nations. And so what they discovered, there was a set of these principal laws and values, and those values, everyone, everything, every entity lived by that. So this was the source of our culture. This was how we develop ourselves, and it's carried on to this day. When we talk about our culture, this is the source of where it came from. So this is how our communities worked. The little people there, the children people, is we knew exactly how to take little boys and make them into men. We knew everything that was supposed to be done. We didn't have to have parenting classes or none of that. We knew how to have the little girls become women. And then the women, they had to grow further to become the elders, in the same way with the men. Then once you become an elder, you become very, very valuable to the community. And so all the people who wanted to know what we were supposed to do, we would go to the elders. And the elders, they would say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you do that. This is the right time. So next to God, there was a source of who all we went to. So during these times, there was problems also, but we knew how to handle problems. So I'm not trying to paint a picture that we didn't have problems, we did. But this time that I'm talking about is so long ago. This was before the Europeans came to this country. And so during this time, we didn't know about hell, but later on, some people came to our country and they said, there's some teachings missing, you need to know about hell. So then we were taught about hell, and we've kind of been in hell ever since. But before that, we didn't know about, any kind of a hell. And so this was the way our communities were. And so what happened was, when the United States started to form, then we lived in land, and that land was wanted for an expansion. So something happened to us. What they described what happened to us, they described that as an Indian problem. So they said, we got a problem now, it's an Indian problem. So how are we going to solve this problem? So this thing that happened was, they took us from this community here, and this is the way our communities are today. So we have, it's even more than alcohol. So we have heroin problems, we have meth, we have missing and murdered women, mental health issues. The little trees represent the children trees. We have youth suicides, fetal alcohol syndrome. So this is for prescription drugs and all this violence, So this is where your clients are going to come from in Indian country. This is the forest that you're going to be visiting. So that's why I'm so honored to be able to share some insights that we have gained over the 34 years with the help of our elders on how is it we help our Native people get sober and well. And so this thing that happened, it was actually funded by the United States government. It actually was designed to destroy our nations, destroy our communities, destroy the family structure, and to destroy the individuals. And so what we think is it's the problem that they had was, when we were in harmony with this earth, they were kind of afraid of us. We had like a power. Somehow we knew some things. So they were trying to figure out, how do we solve this Indian problem? So one of the things they said is, they're in harmony with this earth. If we can get them to not be, then we'll be able to rule them. We can get them all mixed up. So we think all we need to do is just take away the spiritual world. That's what we're going to do. And so the question was, how was this done? So I want to show you a very short video clip on how the government's approach was to handle this Indian problem.
There is one dark day in the lives of Indian children, the day when they are forcibly taken away from those who love and care for them, from those who speak their language. They are dragged, some screaming and weeping, others in silent terror, to a boarding school where they are to be remade into white kids.
By the late 19th century, the Indian Wars were over. The United States seized on a ruthless strategy to assimilate Native children to a subordinate place in white-dominated society. Government-run boarding schools.
I was 5 years old. My mother was crying and they were taking us off. And my sister Audrey, who also, was like a second mother to me and a very close friend as a sister. And my brother Mark, they were very sad. Within 2 hours or so after the buses filled up and we were down the road, this is the furthest I've ever been from my home in my life. And then, of course, it turns into evening and we arrive at this place.
Told me anything about school. I didn't know what the education was. I remember that I wanted to go home, period. Didn't want to be there, I just wanted to go home.
And we all had to strip down naked, and then they put the DDT on us, they line us up, they're cutting our hair. You have long hair, you have braids, and then that gets cut off. And I would say within a matter of hour and a half, we're standing there, all looking alike.
Between the 1870s and the 1960s, over 100,000 Indian children were sent to one of the nearly 500 boarding schools scattered across the United States.
Through the agencies of the government, they are being rapidly brought from their state of comparative savagery and barbarism to one of civilization.
We couldn't sing any native songs or tribal songs. They just started using English. You could not use any other language. And we'd whisper it. Pass the Coyhis, pass the bread over. It's like I had to be two people. I had to be Now Cummig, I had to be Dennis Banks. Now Cummig is my real name, my Ojibwe name. Dennis Banks had to be very protective of Now Cummig. And so I learned who the presidents were, and I learned the math, I learned the social studies, I learned the English, and Now Cummig was still there.
This is education that was promised us, that was guaranteed us through the treaties. But it wasn't. It's torture, brainwashing. They called us many different names. Savage, dumb. And we got beat for looking like an Indian, smelling like an Indian, and even speaking Indian. Everything I did.
Their de-Indianization program had failed, but the toll was devastating. It destroyed our family. It destroyed that relationship we had with our mother. I could never regain that friendship, loveship relationship that I had with my mother. It wasn't there anymore. And that's what, to this day, I keep thinking that, you know, damn this government, what it did to me and what it did to thousands of other children across this country.
So in order to effectively treat Native people, it would be greatly to your advantage to have an understanding of what happened at these boarding schools, because I don't myself know a Native person alive that has not been affected by this boarding school. So what the government did is they built 500 schools. They took the kids away from the parents can you imagine what would happen if one Saturday the military would come take your kids? But to handle the Indian problem, they had to break the cycle. So what they did is they took the children out of the villages by the thousands, and instead of teaching them what we were teaching them all along, what happened was instead is that what we were teaching was the healing and the spirituality, etc. It started in the schools where they were not teaching the ceremonies, the things that we were effectively raising kids at. And instead, the children there experienced the beatings and taking away the language. There was no teachings. There was sexual abuse going on, soap in the mouth. And so when these little kids grew up and they came back home, this is the first appearance that we saw of alcoholism. This is the first appearance that we started to see of the abuses, of the sexual abuse. This was the first time we started to see adults hurting children because they started to parent how they were parented in the boarding schools. And what we know about this is this was a source of a downfall. And as you'll see in a second, why it is important for, if you are going to be treating Native people, is to know about this, because many by the thousands, how they grew up and what they learned was early childhood trauma. And so that early childhood trauma translated into, we started seeing we were hurting one another. Men were hurting children, wives were hurting children, spouses were hurting one another. So all of a sudden we started to create a generation of a lateral violence. And so what we started to see is from generation to generation, the descendants of the boarding school, what we have learned is this. We didn't know this until about 10, 12 years ago, but trauma is recorded in the DNA and then is transferred down to the next generation. So it's really nature has designed, if the human being experiences trauma, then it makes changes within its own psyche to survive. And so how that's recorded, so we have this trauma is being handed down from one generation to the next. In other words, you didn't really have to go to the boarding school, but you had to only have your grandparents or any of them go. And if they experienced the abuse and the terror and the trauma, then you can have that trauma and not know it. So when you're treating Native people, if you know this, because sometimes you can, it's sort of like you can be in a state of, you don't know what you don't know. And hopefully what we're doing here in sharing this is that some of you are gonna now know what you don't know, and what that's gonna do is help make you more effective. But you're gonna need to have an understanding of the intergenerational trauma and how this thing works, because it's transferred in the DNA from one generation, you see, to the next. And so when we take a look at how we are, is we have, say, up to 7 generations of our ancestors inside of us, talking about today. I'm carrying around the hurt of my grandparents. Then we have the trauma that's going on today. And the thing about trauma is it doesn't surface right away. It's kept in community secrets. So for 3 to 4 generations, this trauma that this whole village is experiencing, it doesn't surface. But there comes a time when it starts to surface. And so what we are seeing now is a lot of these issues, we go, where the heck did this come from? How did this happen? But can you have an understanding of these issues that's in our communities? One of them is alcohol. What we know about alcohol now is alcohol is a symptom, it's not a cause. What we realize is there's something causes the alcohol, something causes the thing to drink and to be abusive, etc. There's something behind it. So what we have learned is we need to go look at the cause. So if you're working with Native people, deep down in the forest, typically we always say we have a layer of anger, guilt, shame, and fear. This trauma that's handed down from generation to generation is very, very deep in the psyche. And we know it's behind the abuses, behind the violence. There's something way down deep that we must address that probably has not happened to a lot of other cultures because they weren't in the boarding school, etc. So this is still alive and well, you see today. So we must have this understanding of the connectedness between trauma, social issues, and family healing. That's what we're saying here. So what this is called is historical trauma. And what is that? It's a combination of immense losses perpetrated upon an entire culture. So this is when some powerful entity says, I'm going to take away your culture, I'll take away your language, the land, the people, I'll take away your way of life, your form of worship, I'll destroy that family structure. So this is what you need to know also in helping treat our native people. These are some of the issues that you're going to be, that will surface or will be hidden in as you work with them in the treatment process. One of the things you will find is that many are going to be experiencing early childhood trauma in our communities. We have so much death in our communities, not just planned death of old age, but suicides and alcohol and murders. And we have a lot of unresolved grief, but it's not talked about because in many cases, we don't know how to process this unresolved grief. Plus, you're going to have the intergenerational trauma. This is something that's being carried around. And then there's a thing that we're calling jealousy. This was something that there's something that was formed by the boarding school in the fort system that came to the community that taught us to turn one family against the other. And that still is very, very alive in our Native communities today. So this is just kind of a heads up. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to see going on when Native people come to your places or for help. So I have heard it said, more powerful than a march of mighty armies. Mighty armies are powerful, but more powerful than that is an idea whose time has come. And so with the help of some of our elders in the early 90s, they held a big gathering of 40 Native elders, the old traditional people. And what they told us is they said, there's a healing time coming. And how they explained that to us, they said, we're going to tell you about the prophecies that has been handed down for a long time. And so I'll just share a couple of them with you at this elders gathering, but they told us that there was going to be a healing time coming, because you can see this is what was going on by 1920, 99% of the Native population had been killed off. It actually was a genocide taking place that nobody was saying anything about. All the Native people you're seeing now are the rebirth out of 1%. There was just a mass killing and elimination, you see, that went on. This trauma is what we're talking about. So what the old people told us during this healing time, they said, a long time ago, the Creator came to Turtle Island, that's what they call the United States, and he said, I'm going to divide you into 4 directions, red, yellow, black, and white. Into each of the directions, I'm going to give you some teachings. So the red direction, he said, I'm going to put in you a blueprint, knowledge about the land, about plants, about spirituality, about the earth. And you're going to be known as the Mother Earth. That's how you're going to be called. They'll call you the spiritual people. The yellow direction, you're going to be given the knowledge about meditation, about air, about breath. The black direction, you're going to get the knowledge about the water. And the white direction, you'll get the knowledge about the fire. And you're to go through the cycles of time. And what you're to do is to gain this knowledge, because a day will come when all 4 directions need to come back and sit in a circle, because each of you are going to have knowledge that the other direction needs. In other words, our red direction, we cannot heal without knowledge from the yellow, the black, or the white, and etc. So they said that there's going to come a time when the healing time, they called it, is the four directions are going to come together. And what you're going to realize is that the Creator did not make four races. The Creator only made one race. He said, what you're going to realize is that there's only a human race. And what they said that when the baby is in the womb, that is where the Creator comes to each one, and he gives them what they called a earth suit, this outside color of the skin. And they said, when you start to sit in a circle, you'll realize that you're not four different races, you're just one race. And that you're going to be given the insight to look past the suit. You can look inside and you can see that I love my children just like you love your children. That this healing time, that this is how things is going to change for us. So one of the prophecies, for example, when we asked him, we said, how do we know that this is a healing time? And one of them said, in our tribe, what the old people told us is they said, the healing time will come right after an eagle lands on the moon. And so all this time, that tribe, they're looking at this healing time. Well, I work for NASA, with NASA, and from Apollo 6 to Apollo 13. And when they put the lunar module, they actually put 12 eagle feathers on that lunar module. So what happened was the spacecraft took off from the Cape in Florida. It circled the moon. And when it landed, first words ever spoken from the moon, it said, the eagle has landed. And so this is what that tribe, they said, this is how we know the healing time is coming, because we thought we would see the eagle like with our eye, but we got the message that the eagle had landed on the moon. And so this is how they started to tell us about why we should start to pay attention, things is going to change. Another tribe, what they told us is they said, what you're going to see is, they said a spider is going to build a web around the earth, all around that whole earth. And when that web was done, they said a woman was going to come forth, she would speak on that web, and all nations would hear her voice. So we finally figured out what they were talking about was the internet. And what they said to us is, we asked them, we said, how come it wasn't a man that spoke? And they said, because a man's knowledge has put it into dysfunction and out of harmony. The woman is going to have the gift, and she's going to start to lead this healing. So they told us, you pay attention. We have to come back to the matriarchal system like our original tribes were. So this is, they give us many, many more, but this is how they talk to us. And those of us that were in this work, we didn't know what to do. And when the elders started to tell us, our spirits woke up. Something started to go on for us. Then another tribe, they said shortly, they said, the healing time will come right after a white buffalo calf is born. So 1994, there was a white buffalo calf born in Janesville, Wisconsin. Then shortly after that, the elders had us build a hoop of 100 eagle feathers, and we had together the elders from the four directions, the traditional people, red, yellow, black, and white. And we brought them to a gathering by the white buffalo calf, and they did a ceremony, and they put in 4 powers in this hoop. 1, powers to forgive the unforgivable, powers of unity, powers of healing, powers of hope, because they said, these are what needs to be done to have the 4 directions come together. These are the powers. So this hoop is like a radio tower. When they put those gifts in there, it's just pulsing out this energy. It's pulsing out this way to change people's minds. And so what happened was they told us that we needed to take this hoop to the people. Since that time, we have traveled over 200,000 miles taking this hoop to communities, talking about we're in recovery, that there's a healing going to take place, that we got to pay attention, that we tell them about the prophecies and all those things. So what the elders told us then is, instead of focusing on historical trauma, what we have to focus on now is intergenerational healing, because it's different. And what is intergenerational healing? It's a combination of the opposite of the immense healing, of training, of returning to bringing the culture back, bringing the language back, attaching to the land, getting healthy way of life, come back to the traditional religions, and to rebuild the family structure. So this is how we were guided and how we were told what to do, because they told us instead of transferring this hurt, this trauma from one generation to the next, we had to start to do was to break the cycle. And what we would start to do is to break the cycle. We start to produce healing. And this is what Harmony is so good at, is they have produced thousands of people that they've broken the cycle. Because when you break the cycle, then you break it for the children. I have 20 grandchildren. All my grandchildren are now sober in drugs. They don't do any of that. And my kids, none of them have problems with alcohol no more. Our family has broken the cycle. So this is what is going on and what you see that we need to do. So one of the things we call this thing, as it started to build energy, was called the Wellbriety Movement. And what does the Wellbriety mean? It's more than just getting sober. It's a sober lifestyle. It's getting well in 4 directions: emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritual. It's coming back to the principal laws and values of the earth. It's walking that red road. That's what we call this movement, the red road. So when you work with people, Native people, you want to talk to them. This is the terminology that is going on at home. It's all over the United States. So when they call this, or you are working with them, you're using a language that they know about, see? And so what we have learned is that how we talk to them about recovery is we say there's 12 steps. When you were drinking, you ended up way out in space. These 12 steps are 12 gentle ways to bring you back. Step by step, you'll come back to be in harmony with the earth again. This is about returning you to your culture and making you the way you're supposed to be. So what we got to start to talk about is that the 12 steps is not a white man's program. You know, this is a Native program. This is a human program. It's a Black program, a yellow program. It's a man program, a woman program, a gay program. It's about the human being coming back, you see, to be in harmony. And so we call it a spiritual awakening. And so what we have learned is that this trauma that is in our communities, it stays hidden for a long time, and then it surfaces. So we look at symptom and causes that we have to address for this, to understand what this connectedness is. So this is why we call it a red road. 4 directions: red, yellow, black, and white. So when we come to that red road, that section, the creator is in the middle. And so that's where the word technology comes from. So what we were able to do is we took the 12 steps of AA, and what under the guidance of our elders, they said, we think in circles, we think in cycles. So they said, put steps 1, 2, 3 in the east, steps 4, 5, 6 in the south, 7, 8, 9 in the west, and then 10, 11, 12 in the north. In the east, that's like a new sun, new day. When you do steps 1, 2, 3, that's where you find your relationship with your creator. When you do the inventory, that's where you find your relationship with yourself. When you make amends, this is like sunset, like letting go. Go set yourself right with your relatives that you cheated or was dishonest with, etc. Then step 10, 11, 12, now you're back in harmony with the earth. We train people on how to do a video series. Those people who do that, we call them fire starters, because a long time ago, the ones that was very important when our tribes moved from one place to the other was the ones that kept the fire. They had a way of holding that fire so when the community landed, they could start that fire and keep everybody warm again. So again, we use some cultural language that means something to people. Then what we added to those 12 steps was it was 12 steps. This is where you see this connecting to the principal laws and values of the earth. So what happened with earth, with the 12 steps, is we added the teachings of the medicine wheel. In this medicine wheel, it has many, 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 many teachings. It tells you how the creator divined the universe. And so we added just not the 12 steps, but to make it a culture appropriate, we added the medicine wheel teachings, you see, to these steps. Because this is what we believe happens, is that these principal laws and values, where are they? Well, the salmon, those laws that applies to the salmon, they're inside of the salmon. So that salmon knows when to swim out to the ocean, hang out 4 years, when to come back to the river where it was born, swims up the river, lays its eggs, and such is the cycle of life. Well, every entity, every plant, every animal, that's what it has, its own principal laws and values inside of itself. So we humans too. So inside of every human being is an innate knowledge of your own well-being. In our culture, we sometimes refer to that as the ancestors inside. The ancestors are speaking to us. So when you start giving them the knowledge about medicinal teachings, something happens because that knowledge is inside of you, and all of a sudden you start to breathe and you go, wow, how do I know this? This seems familiar to me. If you can help the Native people that you treat have that experience, but you got to know what the medicinal teachings are. Then we also add to the 12-step training, the cycle of life. Some of you will recognize these 8 stages as Erik Erikson's developmental stages. Well, Erik Erikson got those from the Native people. He didn't steal it. He tried to tell people this is where I got it from, but people didn't write the books that way. And so this was how we knew how to raise children, all the way up how we raised men to become adults, elders. This knowledge is what was in our language and in our communities. So we added this to the 12 steps, and we have videotapes that explains like the cultural meaning, how this was in the old days, so that they are able to see that what we're growing is, like when you start drinking when you're a teenager, you freeze emotionally. So you can, if you don't do something about it, your body gets old. You could be a 40-year-old teenager in a way, because you have not grown up emotionally. So we explain this, how this whole system, you see how this works. So over the 34 years, we not only were able to do this for the men, for the women, but we produce programs for the fatherhood, for motherhood, bringing back the same teachings for daughters of tradition, sons of tradition, medicine wheels, celebrating families. So over re-entry, coming back from prison. So this is what we have done. So one of the things is we talked about, share about was Wellbriety certified treatment centers. And so what we found was over the years, is tribes would call us and they'd say, we want to have somebody go to treatment. Is there any place that we can have them go to treatment where they can learn the culture, where they can learn the songs, or where they can use the culture and the language? And so we kept getting those requests for that, because a lot of the tribes, especially with the introduction of the casinos and stuff back, they spend $1 million sending their people to treatment. And when they send them just to other methodologies that don't bring back the culture, they don't seem to have a lot of success for this reason. So that was when we started to take a look at the treatment centers and how is it we could help the communities have people go. So when we started all of this work, the elders gave us different teachings and different laws that we were to implement. We had no idea this is how it worked, but this is what they told us. When we first started, they said, we're going to give you 4 laws that will help you help the communities heal. The first law is changes from within. So whatever you do with your programs, you got to teach people, if you're going to change, the changes from within yourself, that there's knowledge inside of yourself that you got to change. But sometimes it's blocked when you have anger or fear. So this is the deal. So every program we design, we have to say, this is how you change you. So we have the medicinal 12 steps for men. Say, how do you change you? We have one for women. How do you change you? We have one for teenagers. All the programs is how do you change you? So then in order for development to occur, it must be preceded by vision. A great learning means when you go to a community, all 4 directions must be in a training: baby, youth, adult, and elder. It involves everybody. But why Wellbriety Treatment Centers is under this 4th law, you must create a healing forest. And this is what this means. let's say you have a 100-acre forest. In that forest, you have all kind of trees, but in that forest, there's a sickness or a disease, sick forest. Then one day you go grab one of those trees and you take it down the road to a nursery. Or that means you take a person out of the community and you put them in treatment. Then when they're in treatment, that tree, you give it all the vitamins and the minerals and everything that it needs to do to be a tree to get well again. You give it all the medicines, then you see that tree get green and get healthy, or you see they go into treatment and they get excited and they get knowledge and they get all of this. Then let's say, now that that tree is healthy, you take that healthy tree and you turn it right back into a sick forest. What will probably happen when you return that well tree back to a sick forest? The odds are very good that it gets sick again. What happens when you have somebody come to treatment and they return back to a community like what we originally said? It's very difficult to maintain your sobriety going back to a community that's very, very dysfunctional. So what they said, you must create a healing forest. So what we have done is, in our communities, we have a medicine 12-step program. We have various programs going in a part of the forest. So what we said was, if we could get treatment centers to use the same programs, if you have a medicine 12-step program in a treatment, when they go back to the forest, there's one there already, they're not returning to the part of the forest that's sick, they're returning to a part of that forest where there's other people who are working on their wellness. And so out of that, we started to design what we call the Wellbriety treatment centers. So this is what that means is there's 3 basic trainings that to get certified for this treatment center. It's a medicine with 12 steps. Mending Broken Hearts, a program that teaches you how to process intergenerational trauma and wire down as reentry. So what's the difference for the tribes is, when they want to send somebody to treatment, we can now say, here is treatment that they teach a culture. In addition to that, that treatment center must have access to an elder. And we're suggesting that they have 1 Native person on staff if they're going to do this. And then there's a book called The Red Road to Wellbriety book. It's sort of like an Indian version of the big book in a way. So these Wellbriety programs, if they are being implemented and taught, then what happens is when they get out of your treatment center and they go home, they got that program right there going already. So they're returning to a healing forest, you see, not a sick forest. And so over the years, we have trained over 25,000 people that are putting these various programs together, in the communities. And so what do you get out of it? One is we advertise to the communities who the Wellbriety treatment centers are. Then we give free vendor space at our conferences. We give a discount for products. Every year we send somebody there to meet and talk with the people to see, do they still, how's it going? And the only investment is the cost of the training plus the annual membership fee. And we have, I think, a little over 12 of these treatment centers going, and probably by the end of this year, we'll have maybe 20 are going, because people are seeing it's very effective. So you don't have to know all this knowledge because it's already on videotapes. So you are able to have it implemented, you see, right in your treatment centers. So this is the White Bison contact information. I'll just leave this screen up there if you want to. Well, basically, this was an eagle's view, and I wanted to leave some time for maybe some questions or some comments for it, because sometimes we just have people say, oh, I'd like to know more, what can I do? So I believe the request was to put your questions on the chat box, and then they would be read to us.
Yes, so I do have a question for you. So Jack says, isn't what was said about trauma, and this goes to earlier in the presentation, isn't what was said about trauma and alcohol as a symptom true for all cultures, even if it is not institutionally caused? How does it relate to the disease concept of addiction and the cause not really being that important?
Well, it does relate to the other cultures. Over the years, we've had different cultures have gotten involved in it. So, for example, we're doing some work in the Black community because we had the boarding school, they had the slavery, and then as time progressed for both of these cultures, our problems are very identical. We have violence within our own communities, we have absentee fatherhoodism, we have all these things. So then you take a look at many of the people who are coming from South America, the immigrants, they are just traumatized terribly when they come here, and even from the Cambodia and different countries over there. So we're finding that when they hear this kind of information, they connect to it, see, very strongly. And so that's that. I think that part of the question that I heard is when I myself, my own personal belief is that I have a disease of alcoholism, and that it is a disease, and that somehow it's been very evident in our family. My dad was very violent, and we were raised, all that went on there. The thing that we did not know was, I guess it's like diabetes. There is a cure for it, that you may not be over diabetes, but there's a cure for it. And so for us, what we have found is that the model of the forest was very good, because we have to go down inside of the forest to work. So myself, I've been at this 40 some years. I still believe I have the disease, and that there's a medicine that I need to take in order for me to continue a sobriety and to grow. And for me, my decision has been the 12 steps, along with culture, along with sweat lodges, along with pipe ceremonies, along with burning my sage, my cedar, sweetgrass. So I think that it helps. These medicines and the cycle of life, this is not an Indian thing, this is a human thing. You don't have a native cycle of life and a Black cycle of life. We have a human beings going to go through those 8 stages. Everybody does, so, but each one of them has to look at the culture that you're taught as you go through that. I'm sure that sometimes from the Black direction, the church teaches those cycle of life teachings, or whatever their spirituality way is. I think we continue to discover more, but I have not seen anyone get in long-term recovery unless they have some form of spirituality. I suppose there is, but I have not met them, myself yet.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a couple other really great questions. So the next one I have is says, I have a number of white people who have used sweat purification ceremonies, sun dance, etc., as part of their spiritual practices. How do we as white people avoid cultural appropriation and or misuse?
Well, it has been misused because there's people have typically the misuse is because people use it and they try to make money. It's kind of I'll run a sweat lodge, I'll charge you this, or I'll do a ceremony, or I'll, it tends to be a greed thing, which is not how that is used in our communities. There's a sacredness to it. But I know Native people. I know white people and other kinds of people. Some of them, I envy their spirituality. They've done the work in in their own way. So I would say, if I wanted to have that to be a little safer, if possible, I would connect to a Native elder. or to some community where there's a spiritual person, we have, there's this belief that like only Native people can teach Native people. In this field that we're in, the enemy is alcohol. It's like an equal opportunity enemy. You don't care whether you're red, yellow, black, or white. I remember I came into recovery, and I thought AA was trying to do away with my culture, but they weren't. Finally, it dawned on me one day, they're trying to help me not drink. They don't care if I got culture or not, you know. So I think that there are, we are starting things called Wellbriety groups. Wellbriety groups is not like AA. Wellbriety groups are all addictions. So we have, in the same meeting, we have AA, Al-Anon, Overeaters, Sex Anonymous, narcotics. And we don't necessarily say, my name's Don, I'm an alcoholic. I say, my name's Don, I'm in recovery. So people are just saying that they're in recovery. Now they're not defining themselves as some type of a discipline, because it makes you seem more welcome. And to answer the question is, if you are able to somehow get involved in talking circles, whether you're red, yellow, black, or white, those circles have a tendency to neutralize prejudice or misconceptions. But because the talking circle, it actually, over a period of time, it gives you those 8 stages of life. The first thing you learn is trust, and then, so say you got multiple different people in there, then you start to have that feeling. It's sort of a spiritual thing. It's how I see it. But the fear from Native people is if you use it to make money.
Okay, I have another great question here. I hope we have time to answer it. There were a couple other of statements and questions and feedback, and I will make sure that all the information is given to you, Don, so maybe you could reach out later on. But this one is, have you found ways for white therapists to introduce Wellbriety to Native clients without triggering shame of this genocidal history? Just challenged by being outside of culture, while also respecting strength and resiliency of culture. I would hope to take student stance with Native clients, and this may be new knowledge or consciousness, plus there's always more depth for us, for the clinicians to learn.
Well, the pandemic has changed things, the virus thing has changed things how it used to be, but we do a training called the Medicine Wheel 12 Steps, and those are not Native specific for attendees. They're for all 4 directions to attend. And I think that for a non-Native person, the more you work on yourself, the more you are accepted. You can cross boundaries when your motive is right or your intent is right. But if you're coming across there with fear, or you're coming across, that you're better than, or you're going to be a savior, you'll have problems, I think. But I think that if you, there are many ways for recovery. I kind of started that way, but if I talk about the Medicine on 12 Steps, have you ever noticed the ones that work those steps, they can cross boundaries? All of a sudden, it's nothing about red, yellow, black, or white, or man or woman. There's something that happens when you start to do that work that removes a whole bunch of barriers that we typically have, around fear. So I would say, if you are in that process of the 12 steps, just work on yourself. And there's only 2 systems of thought. One is fear and one is love. And if you are trying to be effective working with Native people and you come from the fear system, it ain't going to work. But if you come back there and you are working from the love system, love crosses all kind of boundaries. It's like magic almost, because the Native culture is really a love-based culture. It's not a fear-based culture. And so I think that you got to examine your beliefs. If you think your spirit can work with another spirit, but if you're thinking white and red, you're going to have trouble, because that's not, it's an earth suit thing. You got to get rid of your earth suit thoughts and realize that you have knowledge. You know, it's like I just got very early and I prayed this morning really a lot, because I'm talking to people who's going to save our people. I don't care whether you're red, yellow, black, or white. Some of you are going to figure this thing out, and you're going to have Native people are going to not die because of the work that you've done in starting to investigate some of the things that happen to the Native people, and that you understand it and you have the empathy for it. But we're not asking anybody to feel guilty or ashamed of it. It's to just acknowledge that you know that it did happen. It's very powerful when you have somebody come up and, you know, it's like that little video we showed that sometimes that touches people and they go, you know, something that really did happen. I didn't know that. And just to have that acknowledged, you know, it's something very powerful.
Well, I agree. Don, thank you so much for this great presentation. We've had a lot of amazing comments. I will make sure that you see every single one of them. I want to thank everybody for taking their time today, for tuning in. Please stay tuned for details coming your way about our next webinar on March 31st. It is with Morgan Roy. She is the Harmony family therapist, and she is presenting on the importance of engaging families in recovery. So stay tuned for those details. Everybody have a wonderful day. Don, thank you again. We'll see you next month.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.